Morning world, it's the 1st of July 2020. We're halfway through the year. You know that feeling you get when you spend a long time building up towards a target or a goal or an aim, and you have to concentrate on lots of separate little component parts and make sure that they're all working perfectly before you can put them into the bigger construct or the bigger picture. A bit like building a website, really. That's how it feels from an astrological perspective. Every planet has been kind of jockeying for position over recent months, and now it seems as if we're in the very, very final stages, literally in this next few days, of things beginning to fall into place so that the planets can do what they will over the next 3 or 4 months without hindrance or without caring for human concerns. Because planets are planets. They give out their own particular form of energy, and they're detached and impersonal and objective. The way that energy is used, of course, is down to us as individuals, both individually and collectively. But the energy is not going to change because we wish it to. The way we use it is a different story. All planets are now approaching prime position for the events of the coming 3 months, and it would be appropriate to say in certain ways that the events of this year so far from an astrological perspective have been not just merely a drill, but basically preparation for what is yet to come. And the events of the coming 3, 4, 5, possibly even 6 months are going to be very significant. They are going to change the world more than it's changed so far this year, but in a very different way to that which we've experienced so far. We now have a situation where we have Jupiter and Pluto going retrograde in Capricorn, and tonight, UK time, in less than 24 hours from me recording this, Saturn will retrograde back into Capricorn. So we will have Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto all going retrograde in Capricorn. Neptune is already going retrograde in Pisces. Uranus is bucking the trend. As far as the big outer planets go, it's still moving forward in Taurus, but it will go retrograde itself in 6 weeks' time. Mercury is still retrograde as I speak at the start of this month, July. Venus has stopped going retrograde, and Venus is now inching further and further away from the sun, and a few people have even seen it as the morning star. I had the first emails a couple of days ago and the first photos. So Venus is slowly picking up speed, and it's not going to really pick up the comparable speed that it needs to sort of be furthest distance from the sun until the end of this month. So it's going to get further and further away from the sun. It will rise higher and higher in the sky in the early morning before sunrise. So for those of you who are up an hour or two before sunrise, the more you get into July and the more you look towards the sunrise point, you will see Venus resplendent and bright. Mars moved into Aries a couple of days ago. Mars is now in Aries, and it will remain there for the rest of this year. We are now faced with the prospect of having Mars in Aries for 6 months. I remember pointing this out to a few astrologers a few years ago, and everyone was like, whoa, that's going to be massive. And now here we are. During July itself, Mars is moving forward in Aries, but it's not really impacting on the larger planets in the sky. What it is going to be impacting is in terms of its ongoing square to Mercury. Mercury is retrograde at the moment in early Cancer. It's still going backwards, and it's getting stronger and stronger in its square to Mars. The square to Mars will become pretty much exact in about a week's time, and then it's going to remain constantly there in the background through to the end of the month. A square from Mercury to Mars does bring a sense of irritation, impatience, frustration. It creates in an individual's chart someone to whom actions speak louder than words, and to whom they'd rather do something than just sit back and talk about it and think about it. In a global perspective, a month of Mercury square Mars is going to create a greater degree of frustration, irritation and impatience with what is generally seen as the status quo or the slowness of the status quo. But this will clear as we hit the start of August, at which time Mars will really start doing its work. But all the planets are in the right signs now, in the right places, especially Mars. And the real effects of this are going to be felt in August, but we're going to get quite a few pre-shocks this month, notably what I've already said around the irritation and the impatience. Very few planets are changing sign in July. Saturn tonight, and the Sun will move into Leo on the 22nd of July, as it always does. And that's it. Mercury's staying in Cancer throughout the month, Venus is staying in Gemini throughout the month, and Mars is staying in Aries throughout the month. Mercury will stop going retrograde on the 12th of July, around about 9:30 a.m. UK time. But on the 12th also is the time when Mars crosses the celestial equator. It goes from a southern declination to a northern declination. It will be on the same parallel with the Sun and the Earth. Also at that time, there's a lot of lineups from a heliocentric chart. The Sun, Jupiter and the Earth will be not far off in line. That comes around the 14th, 15th. And Mercury, Venus and the Sun will be in line around about the 12th, 13th. So I'm really hitting this, I'm really focusing on this 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th of July time as a time where I do expect there to be considerable geophysical challenges. Whether this can be, it's not going to be sunspots because the Sun is being quieter than it has been for a decade. We are at sunspot minimum, and that normally means that something's brewing. It might be solar flares, will be some type of geophysical disturbance, whether that is lightning storms, earthquake, possibly hurricanes, not really the right season, volcano. Something's coming around July the 11th to the 14th. There's also the third of the 3 eclipses happening in a few days' time. It will be the eclipse, the partial eclipse of the full moon on the 5th of July, around about 5:45 in the morning UK time. Now, it's not really a strong eclipse. It will only be a penumbral one, which means that we won't actually see parts of the moon obscured, or parts of the Sun obscured. It's a full moon, so it'll be parts of the moon obscured. But we will see the moon's full moon change colour. It'll probably go from a kind of bright white down to a rusty brown or a dim orange, depending on what part of the world you're seeing from and your atmospheric conditions. But that full moon is taking place exactly opposite the Sun position in the horoscope of the US of A and squaring the Saturn position in the horoscope of the US of A. And at the moment, the US of A is going through some really difficult times. My heart goes out to them, to the vast majority of people out there who are suffering. There's a philosophy out there at the moment that real men don't wear masks. These are the same real men who strut around with guns and have probably got very small other appendages. There is a virus that's going around the world, and it's the first one that's been truly global for a long, long time. And it's interesting that the countries that have taken on a more mercenary attitude, we will open, we will keep the factories going, we will open the restaurants and the bars, are the countries that are suffering the most. Brazil, Mexico, Peru, India, the US of A. The countries that have stuck to a lockdown seem to be coming out of it, at least for the time being, although it's already proving, certainly in Germany and the UK, that isolated spots are still coming up with virus, and this virus is here to stay. Immunity is the only real way. By the time that any vaccines are ready, the virus would have mutated into something else. I note with alarm the stories coming out of China in the last few days around a new virus in pigs, factory-fed pigs. And it does seem that many of the viruses that seem to be happening in recent decades seem to be coming, not exclusively, but majority seem to be coming from animals that we've reared for consumption. And the way we manage animals says a lot about the respect we have for the planet. Or not. This month is going to see a set of increasingly nervous tremors, if you like. Environmentally, geophysically, emotionally, mentally, politically, economically. The economic forecast is still deteriorating, and I still maintain that we are heading into a recession and probably a depression that we will not come out of until the end of the Saturn-Uranus square, which won't be till the end of 2021. But the real big challenge is the kind of breaking point, if you like, will be in August. It's becoming increasingly clear to me through looking at, I've done 398 readings in the first 6 months of this year for individual clients. I checked last night. And that's 800 a year, which is about par. Can't do more than that because I burn out. Especially now I'm only working a 3-day week. But honestly, so many people are being affected by this big Mars square to Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto that's coming up in the 2nd and 3rd week of August, that I can't help but feel that the resonances from individual charts are going to emerge into the outside world. And I'm still fingering this time of mid-August, mid-late August, the time around perhaps the 14th through to the 23rd of August as being absolutely critical for the rest of the year. I consider this to be one of the 2 most difficult remaining times of the year. The second will be the time when Jupiter and Pluto come together again sometime around November. By the time Mars squares them again later in the year, Jupiter and Saturn would have moved into Aquarius. There are going to be some really, really big developments globally just before the end of the year when Jupiter and Saturn together move into Aquarius within the space of 48 hours of each other. And that's something to look at another time. But July is a time of increased premonitions. People I know who are sensitive are reporting that the dreams, intuitions, psychic experiences are going off the rails. There's so many going on. The astronomy websites I look at, particularly Suspicious Observers, which I've been looking at for years. Thank you, Ben Davidson. You provide a great service. He's talking more and more of a catastrophe, the approaching catastrophe. And I'm not buying into that. Not yet. Well, not at all, because I'm an optimist at the end of the day. It may not seem like it at the moment. But we are heading into such a period of concentrated and compressed change, the like of which we've probably never seen on this planet. And it's going to change the way we all live. And it's not going to change it in terms of the way we consume food or grow food. Well, not majorly. And it's not going to change it in the way we deal with each other as neighbours and friends and community. It's going to change the way we run this planet economically and politically. And that's going to send terror and tremors down the spines of those people who have a vested interest in power politics. But it's inevitable. This is a time of change. You either surf the wave of change and flow with it, or you cling to the rocks and get absolutely trashed. Change is an essential. Without change, you get entropy and decay. July is the last shudders before the waves of change really come in. I'm actually really looking forward to it because it's going to be exciting, stimulating. I'm anticipating it, little bit of trepidation, little bit of nervousness. And we're all going to feel very, very alive, and just a little bit nervous. Now here's a treat. Later today, I'm going to publish 12 videos on YouTube for each sign of the zodiac, giving my forecast for each sign for the coming 12 months. Catch you later, world. Bye.